Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 201. We're getting into big numbers here of the All Dolphins podcast. Um,
Yeah, I felt like I wanted to begin season 2 at episode 201, but I'm not going to do that yet. We weren't in agreements on it, but I don't know when we'll begin season 2. When is that?
I don't know. And how to differentiate one episode from another. I mean, we'll get, depending on how long we do this, how we might get to, I don't know, episode 5038 or whatever. Anyway, for the time being, we're continuing to number them. Today is 201 on this Wednesday, January 17th,
And I'm
20.
ready for my history lesson.
Yes, and I was remiss yesterday in the live episode not to do one for episode 200, which would mean the 2000 season, which is bad to slip it over because it's the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game. That happened, of course,
It,
December
it
3rd.
happened so long ago, I actually don't remember it. Zero. So I'm ready for this
Great
history
game.
lesson.
Okay, the 2000 season was the first one with Dave Wanstead as head coach after he had replaced Jimmy Johnson. It was the offseason where Dan Marino retired. They signed Jay Fiedler to be the starting quarterback. He won the start. No, they signed him to compete with Damon Heward, who had been the backup in '99 to compete for the starting job. They gave it to Jay Fiedler. Dolphins got off to a good start. They defeated the Seattle Seahawks in Dave Wanstead's first game, 23-0, behind a good rushing effort from Lamar Smith, who they picked up as a free agent running back, who wound up rushing for over 1,000 yards.
Thurman Thomas was on that team.
Yeah, he blew out his knee in October, I want to say, and he was like a kind of a third down back role, was mostly pass catching, and then blew out a knee October and November, and then that was it. Never played again in the NFL. The season was also famous for the Monday Night Miracle, which was a Monday night game against the Jets at not MetLife Stadium, well, and it was a Giant Stadium, where the Dolphins led 30-7 entering the fourth quarter and blew it. And they actually, this was a weird game too, because they actually wound up trailing 37-30, tied the game, got the ball first in overtime.
Oh, yeah.
Jay Fiedler gets intercepted, but it was Marcus Coleman who's a DB, fumbles on the interception return. Dolphins recovered, and like 4 plays later, Jay Fiedler's intercepted again by Marcus Coleman. Jets go down, kick a field goal. So Dolphins lose that game, which was you want to talk about a collapse? That was a collapse. The Dolphins, though, rebounded, won the division title in a weird game at New England, last game of the season, where Linda Murray kicks a field goal. I think it was like 49 yards. Time's expired. The Dolphins won. Ooh, all of a sudden, the officials, half an hour after the fact, for some reason, decide, no, wait, there's time left on the clock. So they literally bring out players from the locker rooms for both teams. I'm not joking. You can look it up. For one last play from, I don't know, the Murray field goal was not on the last play of the game, but it was late. Then the game's over, but no, the game's not over. Both teams come back onto the field. Michael Bishop is then inserted a quarterback for the Patriots because Drew Bledsoe is showered and he's ready to go home. Throws one desperation heave. Incomplete. Dolphins win the division title, and they get to celebrate for a second time in a half-hour span. I'm not joking.
I was alive and paying attention to football back then. I have no idea that even happened. I think that was the year I graduated college, which was a complete blur to me.
Yes, maybe.
It was a good year, though. It was a really good year. Okay. 2021. Let's move on to the 2021 season, which was another 11-5 record, which is one of the reasons why I think the Dolphin fans put too much disrespect on Dave Wanstead, who had back-to-back 11-5 seasons.
Okay, so that 2000 season ended the following week at Oakland. Dolphins had run Lamar Smith into the ground, rushed for over 200 yards against the Colts, but he had nothing left in the tank the following week. Lost 27-0 at Oakland. Ironically, the Dolphins had the ball first. They drove to like the Oakland 30-yard line or whatever. Jay Fiedler threw a pick six, I want to say it was. I know it was an interception. I think it was a pick six, and it was never a game. Anyway, that game did feature one of the most stupid catches you'll ever see. That Odell Beckham type of catch, one-handed, stretch all over the place.
By who? Oronde Gadsden?
Oronde Gadsden.
Yeah.
It came when the Dolphins were trailing 27-0 in the second half. But
that guy had hands like a catcher's mitt.
Mm-hmm.
And his son's a pretty good tight end who suffered an injury at Syracuse. I don't know if he's in the draft now or if he is going back to college. I know he was a very good tight end prospect at Syracuse, and he got injured during the season. But maybe he's in the transfer portal because everybody could go in the transfer portal these days and shop themselves to the highest bidder.
Who's no longer in the transfer portal is Tua's brother.
Yes,
for the draft. So
he lost his campaign pitch for another year of eligibility.
Oh, is that what happened? That's why he declared for the draft?
Yes, he did. And then I was hopeful that the Hurricanes would make a campaign for him, but they didn't. They ended up getting the Ward kid, who was from Washington State, who's supposedly a better prospect. So it'll be interesting to see how that University of Miami season plays out. But let's get to 2021, since I don't have any idea what happened. 2001, yes.
Okay, so the Dolphins come back after making the playoffs. They made the playoffs again, and in 2001, what stands out immediately about that season, of course, was the games of week 2 or week 3. It was week 3. One of the early season games were canceled because of the events of 9/11.
Oh, okay.
It was week 2. And then the Dolphins came back. The first game after 9/11, they played the Oakland Raiders at Hard Rock Stadium, Joe Pro Player, whatever it was called back then. And they won a thrilling game. Last second touchdown run by Jay Fiedler on a scramble with time running out. And famous picture from Sports Illustrated of Fiedler on the ground in the end zone, like holding his right hand up in celebration. But that game, the atmosphere was completely electric. Dolphins wound up 11-5. They made the playoffs as a wild card. They had a chance to win the division, lost at New England late in the season. And the Patriots wound up winning their first Super Bowl with Brady. Dolphins faced the Baltimore Ravens in the wild card playoffs at home, and they got out-physicaled, overpowered, outmatched, 20-3 final.
So it's been basically a decade. It's been 2 decades since the Baltimore Ravens have been out physicaling Miami. Oh, pretty much, yeah. And that was the Brian Billick Ravens, I believe.
What? No, they were the defending Super Bowl champions. Dolphins didn't match. What else stood out? And I guess we should mention that year was also should be remembered, not fondly, for the draft when the Dolphins had pick 26, I want to say, and
is that the cornerback? Yes,
they could have had Drew Brees, and there were some in the organizations who were pushing for the Dolphins to draft Drew Brees. They decided nope.
Jamar Fletcher.
Instead, we'll go with a zone cornerback for our press defense, even though we have 2 great starters with Madison and Surtain, and drafted Jamar Fletcher.
Hey, you stuck to your draft board. That's always an important thing. I'm a firm believer of sticking to your draft board and not drafting for needs. And actually, that has been Chris Grier's approach for most seasons when he's been in charge. When you draft for needs, you get yourself in trouble. And we can go through so many instances where the Miami Dolphins have drafted a player like Jarvis Landry or Xavier Howard, a position where they had good players under contract and wound up with the better player and a foundational piece. Laremy Tunsil, it's happened so many times. I'm a firm believer after watching this franchise for 15 years. You draft BPA, not for.
Well, I agree. Except there's nobody in his right mind who would say that Jamar Fletcher was a better player than Drew Brees. So they went BPA. Great, they picked the wrong guy because Jamar Fletcher
he didn't even fit the scheme. Yeah.
Well, forget being a bad scheme fit, which right away was like, he was great in college, but he didn't pan out in the NFL even after the Dolphins traded him to the Chargers for basically a cup of coffee. And I would point out a couple of other instances where the Dolphins did draft for need in the last, say, like 10 years. Jawan James, you're not going to tell me that wasn't a pick for need.
That was absolutely a pick for need.
Okay. And
wrong player should have been Morgan Moses, but it was a pick for need.
Okay. And I would make the argument that Austin Jackson also was a need pick as the second of the 3 picks.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. God, yeah. Anytime you mention that draft, I think about Noah Igbinoghene and how many good players you could have got for that 31st pick, but you chose Noah Igbinoghene, who in all honesty, was on my man crush list as a second round pick and a priority selection for the Dolphins. So I'm not going to sit here and be a complete fraud because I like Noah Benogany in the draft process as well.
Okay,
I was just like Brian Flores.
This is where also at 18 they could have had Justin Jefferson, which would have negated the need for Jalen Waddle the following year, and then they could have just taken Micah Parsons, and then at 30 they could have taken Jonathan Taylor instead of Noah Benogany.
Hey, we can't live in the past, but we have
cannot live in the past.
We have to live in the present. And this episode is really about discussing something that we touched on a little bit earlier in this week, which are foundational pieces. Because I really start my off-season analysis, and I'm honestly doing a lot of Joe Rose stuff, and I actually will be doing all of next week, which is
man, look at
yeah,
you, Mr. You call you Mr. Kelly now?
What'd you say? Oh no, stop it. Okay. Actually, it's a strain. So it's a challenge when you got to wake up at 5 a.m. to go do a radio show for 4 hours. But the most important thing in my mind is Chris Grier talked about the building block and the young core and the young nucleus. And when we purged the roster in 2019, and then got all these draft picks by trading players, we had all these young, cheap assets that we developed, like the Austin Jacksons and the Robert Hunts and, even the Mike Gesicki's. But the unfortunate part about when you have young players who basically played the duration of their rookie season and they develop for 4 years is they get to the point where Mike Tannenbaum calls it, they have to graduate from the program. Because they priced themselves out of being affordable players for the Miami Dolphins. Now, we're sort of in a transitional period as a franchise. Rebuilds generally don't last 5 seasons. Now, we are pushing on our 6th season of a rebuild. The approach has changed, which is also something that we probably need to discuss because Chris Grier said, yeah, we are moving into the 6th year of a rebuild, but kind of it got reset when Mike McDaniel joined the franchise. And it's true. Hold on, wait a minute. Hear me out. It is true that this is a reset just because schematics changed. The scheme you play changed. The style of defense you play changed. Like, look at Raekwon Davis. That is a foundational piece that kind of got pushed off his spot because you didn't really use or utilize a nose tackle much. And there are other guys before Andrew Van Ginkel emerged as a backup starter. He was a player that was young and developmental, and you kind of just moved off him because you acquired Bradley Chubb and the scheme changed, and he wasn't necessarily an ideal fit until Vic Fangio came in and said, no. I like that guy. No.
Van Ginkel, if you remember, started a lot of games as a rookie in 2019. Again, because the roster was under.
I think it was his second year. I think he got injured as a rookie his first year. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did, and he started his second year, and he started like his third year, fourth year.
But here's the thing: is they kept as a base 3-4 in both. Because I don't know if I'd ever call Raekwon Davis, all due respect, a foundational piece. He's a guy he's kind of a role player when the Dolphins want to go big on the defensive line. I'm sorry, my apologies. You are correct. Where's my mint for you?
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not necessarily. I mean, for the scheme that they played under Flores, he was kind of a foundational piece. It did in the style, the hybrid that they had. Vic Fangio is not a hybrid. And he's not really a traditional 3-4 player, a coach either. Even though that's their base, their nickel packages and it works for them is two defensive tackles.
2-4-5, basically what they play.
Exactly, it's a 2-4-5.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about these foundational pieces. And I think that when you look at the foundational piece, it all begins with the quarterback, who generally should be a foundational piece. Should be. They have a top 10 quarterback. They have a Pro Bowler. You can argue what you want about how good he is, the fact he's not elite, and that is not an up for debate. He is not elite yet. Whether he can get there, we will debate that for another 2 years. But
no, we shouldn't be debating it for another 2 years because, again, exactly how long are we giving anybody?
six. I think. I mean,
Jesus.
we will.
Flash forward January 23rd, 2032. Tua has arrived.
Listen, he's going to get his 5th-year option, so that's your 5. Then,
and that again,
okay, and you think they're just going to move on from him after his 5th-year option? You think he's going to be?
If it's the same again, I hate that we keep having the same discussion.
Okay, is he a foundational piece or is he not a foundational piece?
No, to be determined. That to me is to be determined. And I went and checked something today because I was like, okay, because I know his passer rating dipped a little bit in a lot of the categories. It's the numbers are all lower in 2023 than they were in 2022, with a better running game, with second year in the scheme. And of course, I'm sure you're going to counter that with the offensive line had a lot of injuries.
I have not done the work, and I'm never going to blame anything on this offensive line. It's been the best offensive line since the Unicorns. You won't hear me using that excuse.
Okay, but average like average gain lower, average per target lower. The volume things like yards, yes, higher, but he threw the ball more often and he played more games. But all the other metrics are down.
Really?
Yes.
You should write something on this because that intrigues me.
I'm going to at some point. I'm like,
you don't want the abuse? Is that what it is? You're running scared?
Kind of like pacing myself and then deciding exactly when to write it, but it needs to be written, and it's also why to me. And there are columns that have been written. Palm Beach posted it. Greg Cody of the Miami Herald today, where it's like blasphemous if you don't give him a big money deal. And to me, it's like, really?
No, I'm a Tua fan, and I'm not. It would go counterculture with where you are and how you've been as an organization. But I'm sorry if you can not give Christian Wilkins a multi-year deal and make him play on his 5th-year option. You could do the same thing for Tua.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you. And to me, and for the record,
I'm not saying you don't make a fair offer, but if we're talking about fair offer, it's more in the line of Kyler Murray money than what my peers are making. And if you'd like to accept Kyler Murray money, we can do that deal, which is around 45 a year. Now, if you're dead set committed to, I need to make 50 a year, okay, then you can wait this process out and take the risk and play on your 5th-year option. I am at that point and I am a fan, as you know. I'm a Tua fan and Tua believer. However, I cannot pay you like an elite quarterback until you show me you're an elite quarterback. And
that's what I've said all along. It's like he's a good quarterback. He had a very, very good year, but again, there was a ceiling. And is that ceiling always going to be there? And to me, the idea of like that you would commit long term without an out for 3-4 years down the road, while that question not having been answered, is completely ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, even if you play him on the 5th-year option, you've got him locked up for 2 because you can do a franchise tag the next year and realistically 3 more years. So, and honestly, if you make Tua play on his 5th-year option, he would probably be the second highest paid player because I do believe that Tyreek will probably be in position to get a new deal. He already makes $30 million a year. He probably needs to have his contract revisited just because you need cap space. And this is the position that you find yourself in when you continue to use the credit card to buy yourself more time on this rebuild. You're going to be forced to put yourself in position to restructure contracts like Jalen Ramsey, who is another foundational piece, and Tyreek, who clearly is a foundational piece, probably one of the top 10 players in the NFL, will probably want to be back in position as the highest paid wide receiver in the league. And he's probably going to need some new wide receivers to get new money, just so that he can reestablish himself. But right now we've addressed, you can argue it as much as you want. I do believe Tua is a foundational piece. We will put a pin in that. We will put a pin in that, and we will discuss the other players. Tyreek, as I mentioned, it's. I think your hand is forced into giving him a new contract because you need money, and he's an easy way to get money.
I know, and that's the other thing with Tua. It's also a very easy way to create cap space if you give him a new contract, and But again, to me, the idea is until you have a definitive answer that the ceiling is higher than what we've seen. I've seen the argument, and I don't mean to belabor the point about Tua, but I've seen the argument of like, well, why would you move on from him because he's our best quarterback since Marino? Well, the bar, no offense, the bar is not exactly very high. Do we want a good quarterback, or do we want one that gives
He is good.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine. Do we want a good quarterback, or do you want one that can compete? Like, yes, I'm going to throw him like a Josh Allen, for example. It's not by accident the Bills have won the division four straight years. And you can roll your eyes all you want. That's not.
I'm not rolling my eyes. Josh Allen is pays child support. He's the daddy.
Just against the Dolphins, the dude's a baller. And guess what? He's not going anywhere anytime soon, and he's in the Dolphins division. So anyway, but let's move on from. No, I was going to address with Tyreek. The issue with him is exactly how long do you want to be committed for a guy who now has been in the league. This was his 8th year. He's a speedy wide receiver who dealt with a lot of injuries.
Are you saying
Hold on. And those prone? I'm not saying he's injury prone. I'm saying he's 30. He's been in the league 8 years. He's a speedy receiver, and those guys, once you start getting injured at a certain age, I believe he's 30 now or something like that. It doesn't go like this. It's going to go like this. So my question is again, how long do you want to tie yourself?
I believe he, according to what I'm looking at now, and I don't know what his birthday is. He's 20. He was 29 this season. Tyreek, next year he's on the books to make $23 million. Even though his contract averages out to 30 a year, he's on the books. You can change a lot of his money. His base salary is $21.8 million, and you could literally turn all of that into a signing bonus, roster bonus, and extending him out, and also lower. I'm sorry, I'm telling you the wrong number. That's the 25 year. His base salary this year. Oh, he's going to make only $19.7 million.
Dude, he made $1 million. He made $1.2 million this year. His cap number jumps from 12.8 to 31.3.
I don't care about cap number. Cap number is a fake number. I'm talking about base salary, and you can lower his cap number by changing the majority of his base salary into a roster bonus, which is what they did last year and what they'll probably continue to do moving forward. He's got 3 more years left on his deal. You can add a 4th year, give him giving a big fat check, giving him all of his $25 million in year 1, and Tyreek can help you alleviate a lot of cap pressure, and that's probably going to be their first avenue to, outside of the releases, to alleviate a lot of the cap pressure. Tyreek likes money. Tyreek is. I know he's talked about retirement, but I'm sorry, Tyreek is not retiring until his contract is up, because nobody's walking away from $30 million, especially while they're still in their prime. And I don't think there's any.
Well, can I interject here for a second?
Yes.
Because you said something that's, sorry, the cap number is not real. The cap number is what matters, actually. This
in terms of the salary cap, and yes,
correct.
There's ways to finagle the cap number. If I give him 85% of his base salary in a roster bonus, cap number goes to $5 million like that. It done.
Correct. I understand that.
Problem solved.
But a lot of that also is going to get spread out, and basically you're kicking a lot of stuff down the road. And then you're kind of
that's exactly what they do. That's how they do business now.
What happens is you're committing yourself. You're making a longer term commitment to the dude, and this is the point I brought up: is exactly how long do you want to be tied to Tyreek?
I don't have a problem adding next year to Tyreek Hill. Okay. I don't. I mean, right now his guaranteed money is, I believe, concluded. Oh no, it concludes at this season. He's got $19.6 million in guaranteed money. So he's already going to get that money. All I'm saying to you is, hey, Tyreek, we're going to add an extra year. We're going to give you 25 instead of 19, and Tyreek's not going to say no to a $5 million raise. And what I'm saying is this can't be a restructure. It has to be an extension to add new money, new years to continue to lower the cap number. In fact, I wouldn't even be shy about adding 2 extra years. I don't have a problem with Tyreek at 34. And even if I add 2 extra years, those 2 years are fake years. Those 2 years can be fake years. I'm just alleviating the cap pressure, which is exactly what they're going to do with Tyreek and another guy, Jalen Ramsey.
By the way, Tyreek's going to be 30 on March 1st.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about a 34-year-old Tyreek. I mean, goodness gracious, that guy's a freak of nature. At the worst, Tyreek can become a slot receiver in the NFL.
Other than Jerry Rice, do you know a ton of 34-year-olds who were speed guys who were like really still effective?
I don't look at Tyreek as a speed guy, but I look at Tyreek as the most dangerous weapon in the NFL.
Why?
Why? Because of what he can do.
What? Speed and quickness.
Okay.
It's not about running. It's not about running in hands. Let's be honest.
He has the highest average in the NFL right now in terms of salary at $30 million a year. Devontae Adams is at $28 million a year. I think some of these Cincinnati Bengals are some of these former LSU prospects, Jefferson and who's the Bengals wide receiver? The name escapes me.
Jamar Chase is from LSU.
Yeah, Jamar Chase. They are going to get to Tyreek's number, and Tyreek is probably going to want to establish himself as still remaining the highest paid player. And I think he is definitely worthy of a $30 million salary, and if not a raise, especially when you need him to redo his deal so you can buy yourself more time with this rebuild. Because Tyreek is the easiest way to create cap space outside of cutting Emmanuel Ogbah and cutting Xavier Howard. And that's why also, if we're going to continue this foundational piece, you do not see Xavier Howard on my list as foundational pieces because while I don't think it's a absolute foregone conclusion that he's going to be gone, I think the Dolphins are going to put him in a situation where they're going to say, hey, Xavier, we think you're more in the realm of an $8 to $10 million a year player right now. We think you're in the Stephon Gilmore realm, the Darius Slay realm, and we would like to revisit that number. We would like to revisit that contract. You are free to go try to work out a deal or a trade or see what the market bears, but this is where we are, and this is what we're willing to do. Now, Xavier has told me he would be open to a trade. Doesn't make any sense for the Dolphins to trade him because it's not going to give them the cap relief that they want or need. A release gives them the cap relief they want or need, unless. So my choices are.
Here's the thing: post June 1 release, which means they can apply that cap space until that. Otherwise, it doesn't save him anything actually.
Yeah. But he's got to be a post June 1st release, which is nothing but more of a technicality. So he's not a foundational piece that I'm using at the present moment. Doesn't mean that he can't be a foundational piece, because I think he's still one of the top upper echelon cornerbacks. He still leads the league in interceptions for people who can't enter the league in 2016.
That's when he came in, yeah.
What'd you say?
That's when he came in.
Yeah. So he's not a foundational piece, but Jalen Ramsey is. And bringing up Jalen Ramsey because he's also a player where if you need cap space, they're probably going to go to Jalen and do the exact same thing they did with Bradley Chubb, where they give him roster bonus, a big fat check now to lower his base salary next year. Him and Ramsey, Tyreek, I think Zach Sealer's a candidate to have his contract revisited. And when I say revisit, I mean Steve Ross is just writing you a big check now to lower your base salary for the year. Austin Jackson is not a candidate because of the way his contract is structured, but Durham Smythe is, Alec Ingold is. All those guys who got new deals last year, their contracts can be revisited to get you a little bit of cap relief. So Chubb, I would not revisit his contract just because he's coming off an injury.
Are we doing contracts? Or are we doing?
I'm talking about foundational pieces. Okay. Chubb is a foundational piece.
Okay.
So is Jalen Phillips.
Agreed.
But you know the situation, and Jalen Phillips will be having his 5th-year option this year. Him and Waddle are both eligible for their 5th-year option. I think it's a no-brainer that you trigger both. That doesn't necessarily impact you right now, but it ensures that they're on the team in 2025.
Correct.
And we all know who Jalen Phillips is, and we all know who Jalen Waddle is. The Jalens, and I don't think I think if you were in a better financial spot, you might be talking about a more multi-year long-term contract where the price is cheaper now than it would be after that 5th-year option. However,
if they ball out.
If they ball out, exactly. So I think you just trigger the 5th-year option, let them play on it. But that leads us to another foundational piece, which is Jevon Holland. And we talked about this previously on the podcast this week, on the books for $1.8 million a year. Both of us, you even admitted it, you wouldn't come to camp for $1.8 million.
I know I'm not on board with you on that. And again, this is a guy who played one game in the final, 7? Had an injury, which he said is not going to require surgery.
Rest.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hold on. So you're coming to camp at one point. You're coming to training camp in the offseason program at $1.8 million.
I don't care what Jevon Holland is going to do. If I'm the Dolphins, I'm saying.
You're saying what?
You're saying come to camp. You want to quote unquote hold in? Fine, hold in.
Okay, so you're okay if he pulls a Christian Wilkins.
He's not Christian Wilkins. Doesn't have the body of work that Christian Wilkins did. And the other part too is Christian Wilkins, to me, was well. Am I okay with it? I don't know. Here's the thing: Christian Wilkins held in. Did it affect his performance a whole lot? No, because Christian's a worker, and he balled out once he got done with the hold in. I'm not getting my new deal. Sucks, but I'm going to show you. And guess what? He showed them.
And who is Christian Wilkins' protege? Answer that question.
Who is Christian Wilkins' protege?
Jevon Holland.
It's not the other way around. Yeah, no. Christian is Jevon Holland's mentor.
If somebody's your protege, then that means it's
your
mentor. Yeah, yes. So of course he's going to take the Christian route.
Holland is Christian's protege, not the other way around. Christian is not Holland's protege; it's the other way around.
I said, who is Christian's protege?
It's Holland, correct? Yes.
Yeah. So he's going to clearly follow in his mentor's lead in how he handles his business, and they share the same agent. So put 2 and 2 together. Again,
has Jevon Holland done enough to where the Dolphins need to acquiesce because Jevon doesn't want to play next year even though he's under contract?
Has he done enough? No.
He's under contract for 2 years, but he's not under. No. Sorry.
No, this is last year. Yeah.
Next year.
Nobody wants to play on a 1-year deal. So unless you're
dude, I want to make $2 million a year. So, I mean, sucks to be me. I understand that every player would want a contract extension before the final year of their contract. Not everybody's going to get it. Is he somebody that the Dolphins could address? Yes. Is he somebody the Dolphins absolutely, positively, without a doubt, need to address, or there's going to be hell to pay? I don't think I'd say that.
Okay.
Especially since the way the season ended, right or wrong.
No, you're right. I think if he was on the field healthy for the final month of the season and probably finishes the team's leading tackler, maybe had more than I think he's got 1 interception this season.
The pick 6.
Yeah. Then you'd have a better argument because he's going to want a top 5 safety salary, and I'm not necessarily certain that he has earned that based on availability, production, but they have high regard for him, probably right under Tua Tagovailoa and Christian Wilkins in regards to their thoughts and of who he is, the respect level for. Come on, he's our captain. Come on.
I'm sorry. You said the Javon is just under 2 and Wilkins. What about Tyreek? What about Teron Armstead? What about Wilkins? I mean, what about Chubb? What about Phillips? Really, we're going to put Javon Holland third?
I think he's in the top 5 of people that the organization respects. And based on what I hear in terms of how they go to his viewpoint and thought process, and yeah, he's got a lot more juice than you think he does.
Yeah, maybe he does.
Yeah. We get to the foundational pieces. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey is a foundational piece. We discussed that already. We talked about Tyreek. Waddle, foundational piece? No? Why would you say he's not a foundational piece when he's the first Dolphins receiver in franchise history with 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons?
I don't consider him a foundational piece. I mean, there's no – because if a team dangles a mid-first round pick at the Dolphins for Jalen Waddle, I think they jump at it. Whereas they do that for
hey, he already told the Indianapolis Colts he's not on the table.
What was that story last year? What was the story?
Jonathan Taylor. Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, that was for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that was there was no first round pick coming. It was Jonathan Taylor who was going to demand a new contract, which is why it was ridiculous.
Hold on. Are you really saying that you're trading Jalen Waddle for a pick 15 in the NFL draft?
I think so.
Why? Established, proven spacer, and you want me to take an unproven commodity for Jalen Waddle?
About to get expensive, and again, he's not a big guy, and
battled injuries this year.
Correct, battled injuries at Alabama, and dude, he broke a foot at Alabama.
I know, but I'm just I'm a little surprised and a little taken aback.
It can be taken far back if you'd like. I'm just and I like Waddle, and it's not a case. Here's the thing: it's not a case of the Dolphins shopping him. It's a case of what
the value is.
We're getting into semantics where I don't think it's a case of a team asking for. Okay, this is first of all, this idea that anybody's untouchable is ridiculous because I could offer you the moon for somebody, and all of a sudden he goes from untouchable to very touchable.
Tyreek is untouchable.
Correct. Nobody's untouchable. Like Laramie Tunsil, for example,
Tyreek is untouchable. I'm not trading Tyreek.
No, if the team comes at you with 3 first-round picks, you're not trading him?
No.
Really?
No.
There's no such thing as untouchable. Really, no. 3 first-round picks for Tyreek, you don't do it.
No, because I don't even want to know what the alternative is. I'm good. Thank you. Okay. Well, I mean, that would be a complete reset. And I'm not opposed to a complete reset, but yeah, that's not the route that I want to go right now. Not in this critical year.
No, correct. Is it because they're in too deep already for?
Yeah, they're in way too deep.
No, correct. No, I think Waddle's a very, very good player, but to me, as far a foundational piece, I think that might be a bridge too far for where I want to take it. But you can make the argument, and I certainly wouldn't have an issue with it.
Now let's get to Zach Sealer. Foundational piece or no?
Borderline.
Had a better year statistically than Christian Wilkins.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm sure. For the sake of this conversation, because Christian Wilkins is not under contract and does not have a franchise tag placed on him as of yet, I do
He's
suspect
under contract until March.
Okay. Is he on the books for 2024, the season that we're referring to? No. So I can't count him. Obviously, he's a foundational piece once he gets the franchise tag. I forget what the price is. I think it's $17 million. It's like 17, 18. I'll look it up. But if another guy outperformed him, and I do make the argument that Zach Sealer outperformed him.
It was very, very close.
It was very, very close.
Yeah.
But one guy made more impact plays.
Again, it was about like this, and maybe the one thing that maybe puts Wilkins slightly ahead is I think he's more of a tone setter than Sealer is.
Okay.
Slightly, but I have no problem with saying that Sealer is a foundational piece. I wouldn't put up much of an argument with you.
Okay. I like when you don't squirm and fight. And to me, the only guy left, there are two guys left that I think are foundational pieces. Austin Jackson, who you re-upped this season, really taking advantage of the fact that he was excelling, and he was also playing with an oblique injury that was a tear that could have ended his season. He played through it. Props to him. But he looked at that as a situation where I need to get my money now before things go absolutely south, and he did. Dolphins signed him to a respectable deal. Now he's going to be here for at least another 2 seasons. Austin, if you just look at his body of work and his body, I could definitely feel comfortable putting him in a foundational piece. Did you realize the transformation? Even to this point where he ended the season,
Yeah.
he looks more like a defensive end than he does an offensive lineman physically.
He does, but I don't think I'd put him in the foundational piece when to me he's like the 4th best offensive lineman on the team.
Name the 4 better.
Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt.
Wow, you still putting Robert Hunt over him? Wow.
Yeah.
After this seat, and I'm a Rob Hunt fan. I like Rob Hunt. I view Rob Hunt as the player who is probably going to escape the Miami Dolphins or graduate from the program, as Mike Tannenbaum calls it, just because there are only so many offensive linemen that you can pay. You cannot pay everybody. It just, you can't pay Teron, who is not going to retire. Don't believe he's not retiring.
I should point out that there was one of our viewers put in the comments that he was at the game in Kansas City and eyeballed Teron Armstead staying on the bench long after the game, soaking up the scene.
You know who also stayed long after soaking up the scene? Christian Wilkins, according to Hard Knocks. And that was one of the things I did catch. Christian Wilkins was on the bench when nobody else was there. They gave it a cinematic view, and I didn't pick up on that. Teron is not retiring. Yes, I do agree with you. Connor Williams was probably their best offensive lineman before he got hurt. Hopefully he'll be brought back. Because he's injured, I have no idea what his market's going to be. If he was re-signed, he would clearly be a foundational piece in my mind. But he was phenomenal when he was healthy. And I think you want to continue that investment. But am I paying him $10 million a year like top centers are getting paid? No, I would not. But I definitely think he's deserving and worthy of a deal comparable to the last deal that he signed, maybe 2 for $15.
Would he be happy with that, or would he say you're paying me, you're lowballing me because I just had a torn ACL?
These are the risks that you take when you play on contracts that are expiring, and obviously Andrew Van Ginkel is going to be in that spot too, where you're going to be trying to maximize your money coming off a serious injury. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, the Dolphins have a ton of work to do to get more money, and to get cap space. So.
Okay, hold on, Amar. According to Spotrac, calculated market value for Connor Williams is $13.5 million average annual salary. And I would point out that Corey Linsley, long time of the Packers, played last year with the Chargers until he was sidelined with a heart issue. Signed at 29, was averaging 12.5 million. And I would probably suggest that Connor Williams, in terms of ability, is in that ballpark. So, yeah.
You're not getting that with an ACL. Is the argument that I'm making, especially one that you suffered late in the season. When is he going to be healthy for the season?
Oh, we're not going to be ready for the start of the season.
I'm not paying premium price for an injured player, and nobody in the NFL does.
Yeah, but it's not a career-threatening injury, and that's the thing that if his agent shows teams like here's the medical report. Once that thing heals, he's going to be like new.
Show me the last player coming off an ACL injury that got a premium price for position. I'd love to see it. It don't happen.
I'll try to do research. If somebody can send me a list of centers who tore an ACL in December, by all means, please. I'll look up and I'll see what happens with their contract. But
yeah, I mean, injured. I'm not talking about just centers. Injured players are not making premium money. That's just not what happens in the NFL. This is not how business gets done. Final player for me, in terms of foundational pieces, Devon Achane.
Completely agree.
He's probably going to move into the featured back role unless Raheem Mostert continues to give him the stiff arm. I do not view Raheem Mostert as a foundational piece just because I believe he's 32.
Correct.
And while he doesn't have a ton of mileage on his legs, we have had a ton of injuries on his career.
Mm-hmm.
And it would probably be more fitting for him to move into the second back role, especially considering Devon led the NFL history in yards per carry average. So that to me makes you a foundational piece. But obviously Raheem is here. He's very close to being a foundational piece. And who knows, he might be the lead back coming into next season. And actually, he's actually a player that you might want to extend his contract another year and get yourself some cap space. So that's not something that I would be surprised if they didn't do as an organization.
And the only reason we're not putting Teron Armstead in that category is because of the age and because of the fact that any season could be his last, because he's like 33 years old, been in the NFL for like 11 seasons now.
So. 11 seasons. He put up a nice 11-year post. And trust me, once you hit double digits as an NFL player every year is you're tremendous. You should be tremendously proud, because players rarely hit 8 seasons. And for a guy to hit 11 and possibly be moving into his 12th, that's phenomenal. I personally don't think he's going to retire, because Teron likes money too much to be walking away from it. And he's got a lot of money on the table right now. I don't think they're going to revisit the contract. They're not in a position to revisit the contract.
Cap number is good.
The contract ultimately, based on the language, is relatively fully guaranteed. I know he says $5 million, but there are triggers in there that have made another portion of it guaranteed already last year. So I think he's going to be back. Do I view him as a foundational piece? Yeah, but it would be very important for you to make sure you have Kendall Lamb back here. However, Kendall has made sure he'd let me know he's not playing for the minimum anymore. And
go Kendall.
And honestly, I don't think Kendall Lamb is a minimum player, and I think there might be a team out there that is interested in signing him as a possible starter, just because that play was upper echelon. I would think he's probably a top 4 performer on this line this year, because when he was out there left tackle, was he an issue?
No, he played very well, without question. And here, the other thing that's going to help him is it's not like quality offensive tackles are necessarily falling off trees these days.
That's a great point. I don't know where this draft stacks up with offensive tackle talent wise, but Kendall has definitely earned my respect. You got any other foundational pieces, players? We covered it.
Yeah, for me, Tyreek Achane.
That's where your list stops.
On offense, Tyreek Achane. Again, Waddle's borderline.
Sealer, you let him in the club.
Sealer's in the club. Wilkins is in the club. Chubb, Phillips, Jalen Ramsey. I'll put Holland in there, and I think that's about it.
Yeah. All right, folks. You know where we are, how to find us. Alldolphins.com. How many stories you got up today, Poupart?
We're. How many stories do you have up, Omar? I have 3 stories up today, including a look at Cam Smith, and then I'll just throw out this great nugget because I already put it on Twitter. Kind of semi-depressing. Of every single solitary second-round pick in the 2023 NFL draft, I looked. Cam Smith played 19 snaps on defense, lowest number of offensive or defensive snaps of any second-round pick. The second lowest was at 83 snaps. Everybody else was 300 or higher.
And I would promise you, based on, Ethan Bonner played more defensive snaps. I would promise you, based on every cornerback that was drafted, he probably played the fewest snaps. And I'm not necessarily saying that's talent, because his teammates say he has talent. That's just you're in the Vic Fangio doghouse, and you got to figure out your way out of it. So,
and that's not because the Dolphins couldn't have used cornerback help.
Yeah, absolutely. But Poupart has a story up on Cam Smith. You know how to find all our work, alldolphins.com. You know how to find the podcast. It's right here on YouTube and any place you can find an audio feed. Just searching All Dolphins. We love it if you subscribe. And thank you for watching. And we will be back later this week to break down the playoffs and the implications that those games have in terms of not really how it affects the Dolphins, because their season's over.
We'll relate it to the Dolphins. Trust us.
Yes, trust us. All right, folks. We will see you tomorrow.